We have a very special guest today, Ryan, who is the CEO of Golf Plus. I first met Ryan back when I was working at Meta, and really his app has become my favorite app in VR. I'm formerly a great golfer, turned horrible golfer in real life. Um, but in his app, I was quite good when we played last time. And it's to me like one of the most meditative and fun ways to spend in VR for a million different reasons. Ryan, this is him with legendary golfer Rory McIlroy. So, for those of you that don't know, Rory is one of the best golfers in the world. His name is mentioned amongst the Tiger Woods. And I believe Ryan also can call him an investor in the business. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
Um, Good. Amazing. So there's kind of three parts to this conversation today that I want to get through to help everybody when it comes to building these startups. The first is a story that I found on Reddit that Ryan had posted a few years ago. And basically, that story is hopefully going to be kind of insights into how bad it feels before it feels good, like how tough it is to really get to the point that he's at with over 1.5 million users. And so he's going to talk about that. Um, the next thing we'll cover is how Ryan thinks about product iteration as baby steps towards this amazing product. If you look at his Meta Quest store ratings, it's like nearly 50,000 5-star ratings, which is insane. And then the third point, after we go through the triumph and tribulation, after we go through the product iteration, we're going to talk about the baby steps he took along the fundraise journey to raise his $6+ million and really build out an insane cap table full of celebrity names. So as I was thinking about what is the general premise and the lessons that I think we'll get out of this today, this is the theme that I felt like was probably most apparent across all three of the topics we're going to cover, which is this idea of baby steps and the idea that, like, you know, how bad is it before it gets good? You see all these great companies out there, but you don't really know the pain that they had to go through in order to achieve that level of success. And so I think today will be really illuminating for everybody to kind of learn like the small baby steps that Ryan took to get there. So Ryan, I'm going to pass the mic to you and let's start off with this story. I found this post online. It's from 3 years ago. Um, the quote is, "What a wild ride this startup has been. 18 months ago, the business had $600,000 of personally guaranteed debt, no product market fit, and hardly any revenue or cash. Yesterday, we did more in a single day of sales than all of our revenue in 2019 and no more debt. VR saved us." I think, you have empathy for founders. So do I. Everyone here is, going through something like this or has already gone through something. So can you maybe explain to us, like, what is this that we're looking at here? And how did you get into this $600,000 of debt and how you got out of it?
Yeah, thanks. I honestly didn't remember this at all, so thanks for sharing it.
Sorry.
Yeah, 3 years is such a long time in this space. Um, but starting a company, it's just so hard. And I think going into starting a company, you really just have to kind of trick yourself into being very excited. Not maybe not trick yourself, but you just have to focus on all the positives and why you're doing it and how great it's going to be one day in the future, in order to just deal with all of the pain and struggles along the way. So, when I started this business in 2017, it was an iPhone app that used AR to read a golf green and show you a line from the ball to the hole, and that was it. And I was pretty bullish on VR and got all the VR stuff in 2016, but then it just sort of didn't go anywhere after the first year or so. And then Apple released ARKit, and I was like, okay, well, maybe VR is not the thing, but AR is going to be the thing. And ARKit now runs on almost 1 billion devices. Apple's obviously kind of pushing it and trying to market it. So I think there's an opportunity to build something in the AR space that could be useful and not just some sort of gimmick, but some sort of tool that people could get value from. So, started the business, built out this AR app. It worked. It could scan a golf green and show you the line from the ball to the hole. I kind of did it as a solo founder. That was sort of important to me. I had founded some stuff prior and went through a startup experience. And through that experience, one of my prior startups, we did like the typical 50-50 split thing. And which I think is like one of the worst things that you can do because it just never works out to be 50-50. So there was kind of a lot of tension on both sides where at different times we both felt like the other person wasn't doing enough, and then it kind of had a bit of an ugly end to it. So I knew I wanted to kind of start it myself, and I was going to build the tech and build the product myself. And I did that, and it got featured by Apple. It was on the top of the App Store. It got App of the Day. It was in the AR section. It was in the sports section. Like all of these amazing things that you don't even expect to happen. And even with all of that, it just wasn't making enough money. I mean, it wasn't really making much money at all. It had like a subscription model, and a bunch of people would download it for free, but hardly anybody would start a trial and subscribe, and it was just too high friction. And then eventually after, launching it, I would use it every time I played because it's my product, obviously. But the more and more time went on, I had a hard time using it myself. I was like kind of feeling socially awkward, and it was this kind of, it was a pretty smooth experience for what it was, but compared to not using it, it was a pretty clunky looking thing where you pull your phone out on a golf green. Um, so that was like, kind of the first moment, like a year after getting this thing out, realizing like, okay, actually built it, it actually worked. Apple featured it, and there's no business here. Like no matter what, like even if we 10x, there's not really a business here. And I don't know how to get people to change their behavior. So this isn't good. So, at that time I had kind of a few employees. We're thinking about different ways to market it, thinking about partnering with people in the golf world to add some credibility. And it all just kind of hit at the same time. Um, where I just kind of realized like this just doesn't make sense to pursue. It just doesn't, it's just not going to work. And during this time, I had started the company and done a very small angel round with a founder that I had worked with before, from the last company that I was at. So he was super supportive, kind of put money in, just having worked with me. He had some trust there, so he put some initial money in. It was all convertible debt. And then I had my parents loan me a couple $100,000 as well, which wasn't convertible debt. It was just straight debt. And they're like, yeah, you are gonna pay this back no matter what. So this is money that you owe us at a very good interest rate, but still. And then found some kind of some more friends and family to do a little bit more. So all said and done, a couple of years in, we have like $600,000 of debt, and basically all of it was personally guaranteed by me, the solo founder. Where if things don't go well, I was gonna have to pay that back, and these are like friends and family and things, so I'm definitely gonna pay it back.
And more than
Uh,
financial, that sucks to sit at the dinner table having something like that happen too, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there was no, I knew going into it, like, I 100% am going to pay this back no matter what. So there was no question. And that just creates a lot of stress, right? And at the same time, the startup that I had left to go do this, it actually got acquired by Capital One and became Capital One Shopping. And everybody on the team got, these incredible deals to stick around, and work at this much bigger company with great benefits and great salaries. And I'm keeping up with them and finding out kind of what their financial picture looks like. And it's like, oh, that's good for you. I went in the complete opposite direction. I'm making no money, and I have all this debt now. So like, and I'm working my ass off. And all that stuff, usually on most days you don't really think about it, but when things just start to go south and the product's not working or people aren't using it or whatever, it just like it's just kind of negative fuel that is hard to ignore. So we have all this debt, product's not working whatsoever, kind of have the moment of like, okay, well, everyone I did take money from, like, will understand. I'll be able to pay them back over time. They're not going to be mad at me. Everyone understands this is a risk, but it's 100% a failure. Like, there's no way around it. Like, shutting this thing down and, figuring out how to pay it all back, it's going to be a failure. And I think I had like my son was probably 2 years old or so at this time. And I just remember thinking, it's like actually taking a bath and thinking like, should I shut this down? Because it's really not working. And like, frankly, I don't really know what's going to make it work. Um, or should I keep going? And I just really didn't know. It was just like, it was just really not clear what to do. Like the keep going side was just really not clear. Like, why would it work a second time if it didn't work the first time? And I remember just kind of being in the bath, like for a week, I was just super depressed and thinking about this. And I just remember thinking like, I really don't want to tell my son that I gave up on my dream. I don't know if I'll ever have a chance to kind of try again. If I go get a job or whatever, like it's just going to be harder to try again, especially as he gets older and stuff. And I was like, I just really don't want to tell him that I just gave up because it got a bit too hard. So at that very moment, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep going. And if it fails and we completely run out of money, then like at least I'll know that I did everything that I could to try to make it work. Um, so at that very moment, I just kind of was like, okay, boom, we're going, we're gonna figure it out. And I think like a few weeks later, the Quest came out, and I tried it, and I was like, well, this is actually interesting. You don't need a whole PC setup, you don't have wires. Maybe there's no golf experiences right now. Maybe there is room for a putting experience. We've already got this great putting tech because of the AR thing. It's like, fuck it, the AI thing's not working, that's going nowhere. Let's just do a complete pivot into VR, and had like, three other people on the team full time. And basically came into work. I was like, just give me a week and I want to show you guys something. Came into work with a prototype that had kind of a putting demo on like hole 7 at Pebble Beach. We got some of the data and set it up, and they all put it on and tried it. And we all just kind of had the same like, this is pretty cool. And that was basically it. And we're like, we're going 100% into VR. And by the way, we don't know anybody at Oculus. We've got no credibility in the gaming space. We don't even know if this is going to be a game or a training aid. But we know that we need to get on the Oculus store. So now we've got to build a compelling demo and show somebody at Oculus.
Okay, so before we get into the sales part of that, how much cash ballpark did you have left when you tabletopped your AR experience and decided to start doing the quest?
We were in the process of raising a little bit more. I think when we did that, we probably had less than 100K for sure, probably less than 6 months of runway.
And are you paying yourself at that point, or I mean, you're not you're just hoping?
No, yeah, I didn't pay myself for the first at least 2 years until we launched on the store and got some traction there. I didn't pay myself. I did have a few employees and they were getting paid salaries. But I wasn't going to pay myself until the business was like making money. It didn't make sense to me to pay myself from debt that I had already guaranteed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you are mentally very distraught. The people that you should have been getting rich with at your last startup had gotten rich essentially, and you're stuck eating ramen noodles. You build out this quest demo. Basically, it sounds like just a very rudimentary demo. And then your plan is we're going to go get a hold of somebody at Meta and figure out how to get onto the store. That's where this is at right now.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And so how do you go from that moment to this guy who tweets back at you, ask, where'd you sell all the first part of your sales? And you say all from the Oculus Quest. So how long of a difference is that from that moment to actually being able to sell something on the Quest store?
It was almost exactly a year. We pivoted, we got into VR like late June of 2019. It may have been early July. And then we launched on the store in late May of 2020. So it was almost kind of exactly a year of like, we're going to go all in on VR and then, having a product on the store.
And how much, I mean, you don't have to get the exact number, but it says here we did more in a single day of sales than all of our revenue in 2019. Is that like you did, 20K of sales because you had such a small number in 2019? Or was it like, oh, we really have something here. We're selling like hotcakes on the Quest store.
I'm trying to figure out when I would have posted this. It was if it was around, so I mean, Christmas is always our biggest sale day.
Hmm.
So this was Christmas of 20, well, it says 18 months ago. So if this was Christmas, what, 2020, 2021 or 2020? I think,
Yep.
it was probably like north of 100K um
Wow.
in on like Christmas of one of those years, which
Okay.
was, yeah, which was a huge deal. I mean, I think the day that we launched on the Meta Store, and it was tiny back then, right? Like there's only the Oculus Quest 1, the 2 hadn't come out yet in May. So I think there were maybe 1 million devices total out there, but there were also like maybe I think less than 100 experiences across the whole store. So we were one of kind of the first 100 or so. No real. There was one other golf one, but it was like pretty janky. Um, and in our first weekend, I think day one and day two, we, I want to say we did like 30 or 40K or something like that in sales, which was crazy because I mean, we were making no money before that. And it's like a team of 3 or 4 of us. So it's like, holy shit, like we are actually making money as a business now. This is crazy.
And how many years into all of this, including the AR app, are you at this point? Two
This would
years?
be like 2.5 years into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Of
a lot of,
me paying myself nothing and just
yeah,
insane amounts of stress.
and not quitting.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that, I've gotten to know kind of your product building process. And I think this is one of the most valuable lessons for early stage. And then the next slide goes into some of the KPIs that you talk about. And so we'll get into some of the later stage stuff here. But I guess specifically like early on when you're building the product, and I'm sure you do the same concept today. Um, you're a huge proponent of iterating, like the smallest possible thing that works being the key aspect, get that thing going, and then kind of scale up from there. So when you launch and do your, 50K, 100K of revenue on that first few months and you're all excited, you think you have something. Is that iteration one where literally there's nothing more to do in the app except just putt on like a putt course, or what was the product at that point?
Yeah. So, we initially we wanted to build a training thing, and then we kind of built a training demo and we built a little game demo and we showed it to the folks at Oculus, and they were basically like, nobody's doing anything in the non-gaming space right now. We'll approve this game that you built. So like we kind of will approve this, and like if you can just build out this game, then like that's the direction that we'll support. So we're like, okay, great, we're gonna build a game apparently. Um, and immediately we, I think, posted on Reddit. Rob, who's on the team, he didn't start the business at the same time as me, but he was there for the vast majority and kind of before we made the pivot. So I consider him my co-founder. He immediately, got Discord going. We created these surveys and sign up forms, and it's like, hey, we're going to create this great golf putting thing. Who's interested? Got a bunch of people to sign up, got people in Discord, immediately sent them a beta of something that was just complete trash. I mean, it was like barely worked, like so many issues with it. And we just get a ton of feedback, take all the feedback, kind of prioritize it, get a version 2 out that addressed as much as that, as much as we could, get that to a group of people, including some new people. So we always had kind of new people coming into every single beta to get new feedback plus existing user feedback. And going from, so that was probably October of 2019 through launching in May of 2020, we went through 7 rounds of our beta where we had a cycle. And we we really took every piece of feedback extremely seriously, especially if someone said they were a golfer. Um, and I remember we were probably 3 weeks out from launching the game or like submitting it to QA at Meta. And at that moment, we're like, we really think that this needs multiplayer. So we're like, I think we can build a 1v1 multiplayer in 3 weeks and like get it in time for the QA process. So that was like the very last feature that we got in was just like jam in multiplayer, which ended up being, I think, one of the best things that we did because it ended up being one of the most popular parts of the game. And then we got the product out there, and then after that, at least every couple of weeks, we were pushing updates with different features, added a course, added some different modes. And I mean, since then, we've probably pushed a few hundred updates to the game over the last 3 or 4 years.
That the number one thing that we hear from founders that have came and spoken with us that are successful is that idea of Discord community iterating with the feedback. It is the number one thing to get going if you're going to build something for consumers.
I completely agree. I mean, there were so many things that I felt extremely passionate about and stubborn about things like we have to do it this way, or this has to work this way. And it's like you send a beta out and you get 9 people out of 10 or 90 out of 100 being like, this doesn't make any sense. You just
Yeah.
can't ignore that. You just are like, okay, I guess I'm wrong. Like, here we go. Let's
Yeah.
try again. And after you do that a few times, you're like, okay, now I really need to validate my ideas before we like go all in.
Yeah. I made the huge mistake of building for a year and a half in my own head and then realizing nobody wanted what I was doing. So it's a good lesson. All right. So you iterate now all the way to the point where you have full on courses, full swings, full everything. The product has, what, 40 courses, 30 courses, 50, I don't know, but like real courses. You just launched a course. I think it was from Dubai. I saw on LinkedIn. And so like you are the proof point that you start with the most basic rudimentary MVP and then just go with the flow until you can get to somewhere. You don't really have that vision and then go build it. Like you said, you weren't even sure if it was going to be a game. You just literally were like right foot, left foot. Okay, what do people want? Great, let's do that. Right foot, left foot. What do people want? And obviously now you've fallen deeply in love with your product, but it's too tough to just have that vision and build to it. You agree?
Yeah, I think the other thing that we really tried to do a lot of is trying to kind of understand, where the market is today and what people are actually interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think one of the traps that's easy to fall into as a founder, and you have to have the right balance, is like I'm going to create the product that the market doesn't know that it wants, right? Like if you're creating kind of a brand new product in a brand new space, it's like, well, people haven't seen any of this stuff before. So like I need to show them something that they want. But I think it's really critical to kind of look at the tea leaves and understand, okay, sure, maybe long term we want golf plus to be full swing golf and have all these real world courses and have all these different modes and let you play every type of golf, but we can't afford to launch that as our first version because like that would take years to build and then like someone else is going to enter. And we started with putting because we had the putting physics. We figured playing full swing golf isn't going to be that fun if the putting part's not fun. So we got to solve that anyway. And if we can just get putting to work, mini golf's kind of a thing. So like we could just turn that into a game and start to get some real user feedback as we work towards this broader mission. And I think we would have stuck with putting a lot longer if Walkabout Mini Golf hadn't launched a few months after we did. So Walkabout launched in September, and they are pure mini golf, whereas we're sort of pro putt. It's not exactly mini golf, but it's not exactly full golf. It's kind of this weird gray area. And seeing Walkabout out there, like kind of own the mini golf space, and then us be this kind of other thing that's like a little bit harder to understand or market, we were like, oh, we really need to differentiate ourselves. We need to figure this out. I don't really, I'm a very competitive person, but I'd rather not compete if I don't have to. I don't want to go head to head to like split the mini golf space into two and like who can have a better mini golf game. I'd rather be like, okay, they're obviously going to own mini golf. They've made that crystal clear with their product. They're doing a great job. The reviews are incredible. People love it. We got to go figure out the full swing golf because no one else has done that. And that's like a green field. And we probably would have waited a lot longer to do that. But now that they came out, this is what we need to do. So now we're just going to go focus on it, even though we're not quite ready for that.
That's interesting. So there is the mix of vision in there in a lot of those decisions based around the market, but you still had to get to a certain point where that was even a feasible thing for you to take that risk on creating your vision and separating. How big was the team when you're implementing the full swing product, and how big is the team today now that you have all these courses and the partnerships with Top Golf and PGA and people like that?
When we launched Golf Plus, our team was 5 people.
Uh-huh.
And today we're 30.
And it's pretty sequential, the growth from 5 to
Yeah,
30.
I think after we launched Golf Plus, it definitely like the 2021 holiday was a big bump from every other holiday. I mean, I guess 2020 was the only other holiday that we had been through. But 2021 kind of exceeded expectations, and then like January, February was like even stronger. So things just got way bigger than we expected, and we didn't even know if a full golf game was going to work because no one had done it before. So we didn't really know what to expect. But once it was kind of working and we found our groove, then in
Mhm.
2021, we grew the team to probably like 20 or 22 people. And then over the last like couple of years, we've added 10 more.
Awesome. So this is something these are from you. You answered that survey I sent out to VR CEOs a while ago, and so I went and got your answers. And you kind of said like these are the metrics you're consistently looking at when you're analyzing the product and the company, and then there's some variable ones that you prioritize KPIs like Discord growth, email reviews, but those are not as consistent. And now you're a big business, 1.5 million users, 6 million raised, 30 people. Like you're a startup that's getting there. Can you talk about how you use this data, how you use these KPIs, um, and kind of like why they're so important for the consumer side? And in 2 weeks, we have a enterprise founder who's doing 10 million in revenue coming to talk to us. So everyone who's on the enterprise side will get there. But let's really focus in on the consumer stuff and kind of talk about how you think about this, Ryan.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so obviously, daily actives, weekly actives, monthly actives, you got to look at all those, understanding how sticky the product is. And I think it's important to define for yourself, like what your expectations are there. Obviously, everybody would love, you know, every weekly active to be a daily active, but that's just not, depending on the product, that's just not realistic. So we've decided weekly actives are actually the one that we're the most interested in, play around a golf every week type of a thing versus like play around a golf every day. So, with that being kind of one of the things we're focused on, it's like, well, how can we create features that are interesting on a weekly basis? So we launched a tournament system. Every week we have a new tournament happening, and it's like, 4 rounds. So some people knock it out in a day, some people spread it across multiple days, but that keeps people wanting to play every week because those tournaments stack up into a season and you have a ranking and everything like that. And then that worked really well, and it created a lot of additional weekly actives that prior might have just been monthly actives. So we're like, well, let's see if we can take that a step further. Instead of just having these weekly tournaments, let's also have daily tournaments. So every day we have a different tournament on a different course with different settings that you can play, and it's just a single round. So those points stack up along with the weekly points to kind of accumulate to your tour ranking. So once we launched the daily tournaments, which happened earlier this year, our daily active to weekly active ratio just went like it just got significantly better, which was super interesting to us. Kind of makes sense. Competitive people love to, kind of get the most out of it. And the coolest thing is we used to just see, on the daily active, we used to just see these big spikes on the weekend. Everything looked like that. Middle of the week was low and end of the week was high. And once we did the daily tournament thing, it really started to flatten out a lot. And our weekly tournaments start on Thursday, so we get a little bump on Thursday, but because of the dailies, it would stay pretty consistent. So instead of having like a 50% difference between kind of our peak daily and our low, it was closer to like 80%, which really just kind of stabilizes the whole thing. So that was, that was really based on looking at those charts and trying to understand, do we care? What do we care more about? The other thing that we've been doing is, so we launched a subscription a year ago, and the subscription gets you access to all the courses in the platform. When we only had a few courses, it wasn't that big of a deal because you could just buy them all, and you don't need to subscribe. But I think we've got like 27 paid courses now. Each one's like $10. So someone coming in and seeing 27 courses and each one being $10, there's like kind of some decision fatigue. Which one should I buy? Like, I don't know. That's like I'm not gonna buy them all. So we're like, okay, well, we'll just offer a pass for $10 a month, or right now it's only $50 a year. And you get access to every single course. We do a 1 week free trial so you can test it out, but you get access to every single course and every course that we're going to release. This year we will have released like 17 courses. So more than one a month. And that has helped out a ton on weekly actives and monthly actives, because we're releasing a course at least every month, if not multiple times a month. And especially the people who are subscribers, when a new course comes out, they want to come check it out. So that's kind of another loop that we have, is like releasing content on a pretty consistent basis, which helps generate revenue, which helps interest in the subscription, and which helps bring people back to the app so they kind of see all the other things that we've done and all the other improvements that we've made. So yeah, that's obviously important. And then once you have subscription, retention should probably be one of your top KPIs regardless. But especially once you have subscription or you're trying to generate in-app revenue, retention is the only way to do that. You need to get people coming back. They need to be sticky. They need to continue to spend money in your product if you're trying to generate recurring revenue.
It's interesting. There's two parts to what you said that I kind of picked up on. Like the one when you talk about tournaments and you're saying how it evens out the weekly active, monthly active distribution. It's not like the product changed. It's just the product experience as far as like the psychology of it. And so that's a really good note. Like you might have a great product, but something around the way you're presenting it might not be getting you the numbers that you need. So that's a very interesting insight. Um, and then so around the retention and the subscription side of things, I mean, all VCs love subscriptions. That's, the bread and butter for an investor, most investors. Um, and you're charging like a fairly low price for a lot. I assume that's because a real high percentage of the people that initially bought the game are then open to subscribing because you knew that they buy less than 5 courses. Otherwise, the 5 courses times $10. And so it made more sense to just give them all the courses for 50. So you're still getting more money than you would if you just let people go through that decision fatigue.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. We're hopeful that if we get you in the first year and you kind of see how much the game improves and you start playing and you find friends and stuff, we're very hopeful that they just stick around for longer. So, once you've paid for a year subscription, it's kind of like, well, I already paid for this, I might as well use it type of a thing. So by getting people into the subscription, we just find that those people, I mean, there's a bias there for sure, but those people are way more active than people who don't subscribe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're just thinking about kind of overall engagement, that's a big driver. Is like we want people to become subscribers so that they are more active and they're more engaged, and that creates a better platform. Um, and then, yeah, when you kind of do the math on subscription versus individual purchases, subscription, it's just so much better. Like we, prior to having subscription, our revenue was kind of super predictable on in terms of seasonality, where like September, October are kind of low points. November starts to pick up towards the end of the month. Then you get December, which is a nice pop, and January is awesome, and February is awesome, and then it just kind of like trickles down, back to sort of a low again in September, October. And it was just very consistent app sales, like huge. I mean, between September and kind of January being usually the most revenue, there's like multiples difference in revenue. But now with subscription working well, it has just created a much flatter curve across the whole year, where we still get a nice pop from the app sales in, December and January. But for those lower months, like those subscribers are creating a lot of consistency for us. So that just makes it a lot easier for us to predict what revenue is going to do and how we should grow the team and where we should invest and stuff like that.
And the cadence you go through with your team, are you reviewing these numbers every Monday with the key people in your company? And so for example, with the daily retention, day 28 retention, do you break that out by subscribers versus just people that bought the app? Or how do you kind of functionally track and improve all of these various metrics with the team?
Yeah, we have a lot of different channels in Slack. We have a bunch of different kind of recurring meetings. We have an analytics meeting every month that we sort of do a deep dive on a lot of different things. Most of the time, we're discussing this stuff kind of on a one-off basis. We have these executive dashes that a lot of the senior folks on the team are kind of looking at on a daily basis to understand if there have been any changes. After each release, we have a review process to understand if any of these core metrics changed. And then every 2 weeks, we do kind of a finance huddle where we go over every single dollar in and out of the business, and we're constantly projecting where we think we're going to come in for sales for the month or for the next month, and then we're just constantly kind of adjusting our estimates based on what we learn. So we've tried to be pretty diligent about predicting what's going to happen, and then anytime something diverges from that prediction, we do dig in and try to understand, what happened there. Hey, this is weird. It looks like for some reason our exposure on the store is like way lower than normal, or our conversion is lower. Sometimes it's something that Meta changed that we then talk to them about. It's like, why did search just drop? Like, we didn't make any changes. What happened? And they're like, oh, it looks like we changed the algorithm. So a lot of the times it's not because of something that we did. Every once in a while, we'll push an update that like, oh, it turns out, this one screen where you see the subscription is now broken and people can't subscribe from there. Our subscriber numbers are down by 20%. Like, we should probably patch this. So yeah, we try to keep a handle on the numbers, and now that we've been doing this for long enough, we have a pretty good sense of like where they're going to be at different times of the year.
And there's two questions in the chat. I'm going to combine them and ask them. So if you could, I guess, like go back to the beginning. Well, let me reframe that. Do you think that all things considered, you'd be better off just selling subscriptions from the beginning versus selling the premium and then upselling to the subscription? And also, how do you think about the annual versus the monthly subscriptions?
Yeah, so on the subscription front, I think a lot of people don't like subscriptions. Everyone's got a bunch of them, and especially in the gaming world, they're not people don't get that excited about subscriptions. I think I frankly, I don't think I would have changed a single thing about how we rolled it out, because we had basically zero backlash, and now most of our community kind of defends it whenever it comes up. And the reason for that is we waited until we had a pretty healthy library of courses. I think we had at least a dozen or 15 courses that you could purchase before we rolled out the subscription. If we had done it at the beginning, we were, the first year, I think we released a total of like 3 courses. And then the next year, I think we did like 6 courses, and then we did 12, and now we're going to do like 18 or whatever. So it took us a while to get this going. And if we try to do a subscription when we only have a few courses, like the math just doesn't really make any sense. The only reason that we were comfortable doing the subscription is because we committed to the community that we were going to release at least 15 courses that next year. So if you get a monthly subscription, even if you own every course up till today, this is still a better deal than buying every course individually. So that was super important for us to get right, is to like know that we are going to be producing a ton of new content. And then the other thing that I think we did right on the subscription front, is there's nothing that you get out of a subscription that you can't just buy without the subscription. If you hate subscriptions, the games you can play the game in exactly the same way. You can go buy every course that you want individually. You never have to subscribe. We don't lock anything behind subscription. We consciously were like, we're not going to create a product where subscribers are sort of treated as like, this upper echelon, when we've got a ton of power users that have been with us for day one and have told us like, I hate subscriptions. I won't do subscriptions. I'll gladly pay you all the money for the courses. I don't care if it costs more money. I just don't like subscriptions. And if you start doing stuff that, make subscribers kind of better users, then like we're going to be mad. So for those reasons, I'm glad that we did it this way, because we didn't create any issues with our community. And now even those people who say they hate subscriptions are sort of like, well, you guys did release all these courses, and actually the math doesn't really make sense. I am going to go ahead and just do this yearly subscription thing because, you know, the numbers are so compelling.
Yeah, it's great value. How big is your Discord community, just real quick, and then let's get to the fundraising?
Uh,
Or where do you, I guess, where
I
is
try
the
my
community?
best to actually not spend much time on Discord, because I get caught up in debates.
Uh,
So Rob manages it. I think we're, you know, somewhere between 30 or 40,000. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure, but it's somewhere in that realm.
awesome. All right. So product, you've proven based on the amount of feedback from users on the Quest store that you have an insane ability to build a great product. This was from your press release. Um, your investor base is pretty ridiculous. We see Steph Curry, Tom Brady, former CEO of IBM, 1-800 Contacts founder. It looks Briar Capital led it, Boost VC, Adam Draper's come and spoken with us before. So, you have like a really interesting mix of uh uh, Briar Capital, which is more traditional VC, and then it looks like a ton of angel investors. Can you walk us through from raising the family and friends around, so right after that, to where you are today on the fundraise journey, and like when did some of these people get involved, and what was your thinking and your process to go about raising this capital?
So the friends and family thing was really just like, you know, can we get money from anybody to keep the lights on? And thankfully we did it almost all as convertible debt. So we were able to, like, once we started making money, we actually ended up paying most of it back versus converting it to equity. So I've always I've always been very kind of dilution sensitive. So my thing is like, I'm gonna raise kind of as little money as I can and try to do as much of it as debt as I can. And I actually just want to build a business that makes money and is profitable. So that way we, you know, can control the direction of it and not get pressured into doing something that we're not ready for. So with that in mind, after we launched Golf Plus in 2021, the 2021 holiday was really strong and the market was really strong. And a lot of these VR companies were getting these insane offers from investors. So, you know, I think we were in the top 10 of the store through the holidays. So we just start getting a lot of inbound interest from investors. Hey, are you raising money? What's going on? And of course, we have a team of like 5 people, and we just had a really strong holiday. So now we've actually got a pretty decent surplus of cash. So we don't really need to raise. And, you know, we weren't even sure how many people we're going to hire or anything like that. So at first it was just like, hey, this feels pretty good. Like, I used to have to go chase people for money, and now they're coming to me and you know, offering these pretty nice terms. Um, but I don't really know a lot about fundraising. I've never really done it before. I don't really know the best way to think about it. I don't want to give away a lot of the company, and a lot of these VCs are, you know, trying to get 20+%. But they're throwing out some really big numbers. So thankfully, at about that same time, somebody reached out to me on LinkedIn that happened to be in town, that was working at another VR company called Win Reality. And was kind of on their business side of things, also just like super into golf. So we go play around in golf together, and it becomes very clear immediately. Like he had used the product, so he had tried Golf Plus, and I was a fan of it. And it just became immediately obvious that we were like a perfect fit for each other. And he loved the business side of things and had worked at Goldman before and had an MBA from UT, and was just awesome at talking to investors and people, and had an incredible network uh, of folks. He's Jimmy Dunn's nephew, and Jimmy Dunn is like ridiculously well connected in the golf world. So we kind of immediately end up being like, this needs to happen. So get him hired, and he starts having all these same conversations with the VCs that we're having. We're just kind of entertaining all the folks that come to us, and then some real offers get thrown around, and we start thinking about what does our perfect round look like. And we just decided we want to limit dilution to like ideally 10%. So that's just going to cross a pretty good chunk of these off the list. And we really want to get as like we really want golfers invested because that's our mission. Like we want people who understand why this is good for golf and who are going to care about what we're building and who are going to care about the product and give us feedback and stuff like that. So it's kind of a long, crazy story, but essentially in a period of like 2 weeks, ended up meeting with the majority of these people. So we met with Jim Breyer from Breyer Capital, and like he's a bit more of a traditional VC, but he's just one guy. He lives in Austin. He's one of the early investors in Facebook, and then was on their board for quite a while. So that was like kind of a great, like him having direct access to Mark was like pretty good thing for us. And he happened to be like a huge golfer, super huge golfer, and knew Jimmy Dunn really well. So we met with him, gave him the pitch. He seemed to like us for one reason or another, even though like we're way smaller than most of the other stuff he invests in. He happens to like be playing golf with Jimmy the like we literally meet at his hangar in Austin to do the meeting. And then as soon as the meeting's over, he like walks into his jet and flies off to go play golf.
Casual hangar meeting. Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes
it
sense.
was like it felt like episode of Billions or something. I was like, this is crazy. And then I think he met up with Jimmy Dunn, who obviously knows his nephew really well, and we had showed him the product. Jimmy is the president of a golf course called Seminole. They have something called the Seminole Pro Member, where all the Seminole members, it's a really kind of exclusive course in Florida. All the Seminole members play with like pro golfers, and like a couple of the members of Seminole are Rory McIlroy's dad. Rory McIlroy is too. Tom Brady is a member there as well. So we go to that and end up meeting with Tom Brady and giving him a demo of the product. And right after he tries it, the first thing he says is like, "This is how I'm going to get my son to start playing golf." So it's like that clicked, and Jimmy was super into it. And then we met with Rory's team, and their team was super into it, and we just got really lucky and had some great meetings. And I think people saw how serious we were about the mission and how much we love golf, and how we really care about what we're trying to accomplish. And yeah, just like dominoes start to fall, and Breyer's like, okay, I'm willing to lead this thing, and Rory's team's like, well, if Breyer's in, like we're in, and then Jimmy's like, well, I'm in, and then you know Tom Brady's like, well, Jimmy's in, I'm in, and then it's like, so we get a few things to fall, and then we get introduced to Ben Crenshaw through Jim, and Mike Trout through Jimmy, I think. And then Steph Curry is just connected to kind of everybody. So we kind of did a pretty specific target of him, knowing that he loves golf, and he's kind of a perfect he's young and cool, and like he's what we want golf to be, like moving in that direction of just like he's a good representation of how we think the game can grow. So we spent a lot of time kind of talking to his team about it, and they got involved. And then a lot of a lot of these other folks are just folks that live here in Austin and kind of heard about us from one source or another, and it just all kind of snowballed.
Um, I was talking with two founders that are on the call today. I see in the audience. But like Uli's building an app. It's VR, but it has to deal with helping children with autism. And so when we were talking about the fundraise strategy, that was something I was saying is like, yes, we need to look for people that understand VR, but to your point, you found people that love golf. Like when we target investors, you should be looking for people that relate to the mission of helping children with autism. Steven and I were talking also, he's doing some stuff in VR film. And so I was saying, you can go after people that have passion for film as kind of like the target market here. And so you really used golf as your key to unlock a lot of these doors. It's like I'd bet 100% of these investors more or less are serious golfers or love golf. And it sounds like that's the kind of the hook there. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah,
congrats. I mean,
that was
also to dilute
100%.
yourself, 10% or whatever, like hell yeah, that's great. That's
It ended
this
up
is
being
cool.
about 12. It ended up being about 12%, but that was because we added a couple extra
Back in
people.
napkin math. I'll take that. That's a great
Yeah.
valuation. That's cool. Um, all right, that's awesome. And so when did Boost VC come in? Because we all love Adam. Like he's one of the leader. He's the leader of investing in AR VR, I would say.
So he was, so he's funny. He was actually one of the first, sort of VCs to reach out. He had talked to me a year prior, right after we had launched kind of our Top Golf experience, and we hadn't done full swing yet. And he and I played around in Top Golf, and he actually ghosted me after that. He's like, "I'm gonna get back to you soon about like potentially investing." And I was like, "Okay, whatever. We're not really raising, but like, sure, whatever." And then he ghosted me, and I never heard from him. And then he reached back a year later and he's like, "Hey, you remember me?" I was like, "Yeah, you ghosted me." And he's like, "Well, I was wrong. I thought that maybe, I didn't think it was going to work. Like, I didn't know where you guys were going to go after the Top Golf thing. I thought maybe it was just like kind of a moment. And I didn't know if it was going to work out, but obviously I was wrong. Now we're really interested. Like, we'd love to do something. We're like ready to go right away." And Brayton, his co-founder, played the game all the time. And like we had his stats and we looked at it and like it was legit. Like he was actually playing the game all the time. So ended up spending a lot more time kind of talking to him. And we just really liked them. And they were super supportive, gave us some good product feedback and everything. And they were willing to write like a pretty small check. So they weren't caught up on, a certain percent ownership. So yeah, we thought it would be great to have them involved. They know the space really well. They're great guys. They use the product, so it was kind of a good fit on all fronts.
Awesome. All right, so we're getting to time. Start to think of questions. We're not gonna have time for all of them because we have to hop off in 5, but let's try to get one or two. If you can write them in the chat, that'll be easiest for me to aggregate. But I want to first off, Ryan, thank you. This was awesome. Like the full story here. I want to end on this answer you gave me, and maybe you could just leave people with some insights around this. I asked you what are the common habits of a top tier AR VR CEO. Um, can you maybe explain this answer and just give us some color to how you think about the habits of a top tier AR VR CEO?
Yeah, I guess it's funny because, honestly, um, in the in the VR space, I think uh, a lot of people look at us as like, "Oh yeah, you guys made it, and you're successful, and you're one of the top selling apps and stuff." But I'm like, man, we're just like barely at the start of this thing, and like we're so far from where I want this to be, and like we're still figuring everything out. So like definitely haven't cracked any sort of code. But I will say, the space is still changing so much. Like it's just so unclear where VR is going to be in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years that I think it's really important to continuously experiment with things that may not make sense today, but could make sense in a year from now or 2 years from now or whatever. Like simple example, we wanted to start as like a training tool. I still want that because as a golfer, like I want to get better myself. So like I'm always experimenting with like strapping new things to golf clubs and like how can we make this more realistic? So this is like the Logitech MX Ink pen, and it's tracked by the headset as an additional device. And it's super light and it's like kind of a nice form factor. So I've been obsessed with like how can I accurately capture a swing where I'm holding my actual club and hitting
Wait, can you
something.
pull that up to the camera again? Now that you're big, I want everyone to see it. Okay,
Yes,
that's funny.
should patent this thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's like obviously no one's gonna tape this to their club, like that's ridiculous. But if we can use this to understand how this works, and maybe one day in the future there'll be some other device that you can track that does make a lot more sense. That's the kind of thing that I'm interested in because it's just not clear where this goes and what's going to work and what's not going to work. So, for me, continuously experimenting with new ideas, and understanding kind of the 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 shape of the space and how things are changing, and like how could we use pass through, or how could we use this new API or whatever. That's the best way to kind of keep an edge, even as the company starts to grow, and you don't have as much time to do things.
That reminds me when Richard showed me his VR samurai sword. Very similar feeling. That's cool.
That's what it's all
Yeah, I
about.
was just thinking about that.
Yeah.
Well, I also got
uh,
the airsoft project as well, so I've got
there
both.
you go. That's awesome. All right. So last question here. And then we'll let you go, Ryan, because I know you're busy. Can you talk about, maybe, I know we don't need to go too in depth in this, but your customer acquisition strategy? How do you keep growing? How are you doing that? Is it paid? Is it, meta?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not one of the easiest things to track. We do the vast majority of our installs, our organic installs, come from search versus store exposure. We get a decent amount of store exposure because we're in the charts, and that kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy to some degree.
Hmm.
But I think like over 3/4 of our installs are coming from search. So one of the benefits that we have compared to other games is, our game, it's called Golf Plus. It's golf. If I say, hey, we're VR golf, like most people can kind of understand what that probably means. And that's what we deliver. We deliver you a golf experience. So, you get a VR headset. Hey, I wonder if they have golf. Search for golf. Golf Plus shows up and people buy it. So I think from that perspective, I think there's just a lot of people that are kind of interested in golf. And then during our onboarding, we run a little survey. We ask like, do you play golf? If you do, sort of what do you shoot? To help us understand a bit more. And then we also ask like, did you buy a headset to play VR golf? Because anecdotally, a lot of people would tell us like, oh, I bought this headset just to play Golf Plus because I got a buddy who plays, or I heard about it. And it turns out over 20% of the people who are coming in now are buying headsets to play Golf Plus or to play golf. So, that's been super interesting. So that suggests to us, obviously, there's a lot of word of mouth going on. Kind of sucks that, people are potentially spending $500 to buy a headset and $30 to buy the game, and we get, 23 of those dollars or whatever, 24. So we're doing a lot of work for like a pretty small pile. But it's great to know that, people are willing to do that. So because of that, our new focus has been like, let's really target golfers. Let's create kind of a compelling ad for golfers, because golfers seem to be the ones that are really loving this experience, and they're more likely to subscribe and everything like that. So we have started to do more paid, but it's like a very small portion of installs. We're doing some stuff with the PGA Tour. We're doing some stuff with Golf Digest for the holidays. We're definitely trying some marketing things. But it's really hard to get any of them to scale because everything saturates so quickly, and then attribution is really hard to track. So, thankfully, because of that, thankfully we've had like a pretty decent just sort of faucet of new users coming in. And a lot of that is correlated with new headset sales as well, which is obviously something that we don't fully control, but explains why during the holidays things look a lot better.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. You've drawn a nice crowd. I see Nanea out there in the audience from Trip. Nanea, you were one of the best guests as well. So hello, hello, hello. I saw Tom from Tribe. I think you worked with him. You're kind of all in the meta bucket over there. So that was really awesome, Ryan. Thanks for sharing the story. Any going away, like what's the one thing everyone should focus on if they could just take one thing away as a founder?
I mean, I think you just got to keep going and find ways. Like for me, the R&D stuff, like it's my fuel. It just gets me excited. I love coming into the office and showing off a new prototype to the team, and we chat about it or whatever, even though I know it's like probably never going to see the light of day. I think it's really important that you find ways to continuously keep your battery charged and stay extremely excited about the space, even when like the numbers aren't looking as good as you hoped, or the headset sales aren't looking as good as you hoped, or whatever. It's just a very choppy space. And we're just kind of constantly thinking about the day when VR does go mainstream and how exciting that's going to be, and that just kind of gets us through the harder parts.
We've all been waiting on it for a decade.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But you're proof that you can build a real business in the meantime. So thank you a ton for coming. Like everyone, if we could unmute and give a nice round of applause here. Yeah, that was awesome, Ryan. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Ryan.
Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. You and Linnea know each other, right? Through Meta, I'm assuming.
We did
Yeah,
a panel together at South by a
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
couple of years ago.
Yeah, it was cool. Definitely.
We'll have to do
I'm a
it.
big golfer too, so I have to become a big golf pluser now. So
Yeah. Let me
Yeah.
know. I'm happy to hook you up with an attachment or whatever you need.
Oh, I would love that so much. Yeah. Yeah.
Linnea, what's your handicap? Ryan was saying he's at a
Well,
2
my
out of 2.
handicap is kind of lame because I don't hit long, but I do hit straight. So, but after Jamdat went public, my late husband and I went and did that bucket list golf tour of Scotland.
Oh my
So
gosh.
at that time, I got my handicap to a 19, so not too shabby, you know.
Respectable.
Yeah, and but I hit at St. Andrews. I hit every bunker except for Duval's bunker. So they were calling me Bunker Betty by the end of it. So.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, yeah, we have some
That-
work to do. So
All right, I'll let you guys go. What was the
no,
panel
I
about?
mean on my
Last
golf
question.
game.
Oh,
We can help with that.
Thank you.
what was the panel about for South by Southwest? Just general VRAR.
Good question.
I
It was
don't
something
even
related to
remember.
VR. Yeah, I don't
Was-
remember either.
Was it like the business of VR or subscription? Because we were some of the first subscription apps too.
Yeah, this was long before we had subscriptions, so I think it was just about, I think it was something business related, like how business people can use VR and they're like, oh, business people like golf and business people like meditating.
Yeah, it's a mighty noble effort though, right? Staying in this space for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, and one of the things we've found is having a cohort of a community of peer group CEOs where because we all want the same things from the platforms, as it were, better search, better featuring, better unit economics, being able to kind of coordinate some of our asks and then do a full court press so that they're
On
hearing
Meta, you're saying.
multiple. Oh, well, Meta, whoever, right? Not just Meta, because we're on all the other platforms too. I think it is because it in some cases the tide does rise all boats, right?
We're happy to chat more about that and
Yeah, I'd love to connect
advocating
with you on
fuel.
that.
Cool, definitely. Thank you.
Cheers.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, Ryan, for coming. We're going to do our wrap up for the next 20 minutes. You're more than welcome to stay if you want to chat with everybody, but we try to like take the key lessons that we heard and regurgitate it as a group now and start to talk through some of the things we learned.
Cool. Thank you for the offer. Unfortunately, I gotta hop to something else, but thanks again for having me. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, you gave us more than enough time, more than promised. So thank you so much and have an awesome day. I'll chat with you later.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Epic. All right, everybody. What did we think?
Just as painful as I thought raising that family round.
Yeah. Pretty easy on the celebrity round, though.
Yeah, I think if you get one, then they all talk, and so you can get the rest of it done. It's just finding that initial lead to really carry the day.
I think it hits home from last week's conversation of creating that momentum and that interest and creating that round of whether it's artificial or in this case, it seems that it was organic, right?
Yeah, you heard him talk about that. It's almost like a domino effect. You know, you get one, everyone else is gonna then come in. And so it's really about how you frame that and keep everybody in the loop so that they feel that tiny bit of FOMO. And we didn't, I was gonna originally ask him like what his process was and then compare it to the presentation I gave a few weeks ago on the fundraising. But he was so like, that was such an easier fundraise than I think most people go through that it really wasn't worth going through the formal process that I had to go through. But yeah, still the same lesson there. It's about, you know, talking to a bunch of people. And the other thing he said that was very directly correlated to the fundraise talk we did, he said he really did all that in a matter of 2 weeks, which is kind of like what I've really been pushing is like you network 80% of the time and then you fundraise. And the fundraise is only actually a matter of, you know, 2 to 4 weeks. Most of it is just networking and kind of building the story and getting everything ready. So he did reference a lot of that, but in a different format.
But also, I
Other
think he
thoughts?
had the track. I think also that helped him is he had the traction and people were excited and wanted to learn more about him, like how Boost VC got involved. And I think especially today, like pre-seed isn't pre-seed. It's like I think you just have to get in the market and show the traction that you have, and then you can attract investors.
Yeah, I mean,
I
that was
think,
definitely
yeah, so I think, I don't know if you can hear me, I'm outside over here. But I think what he was saying was very inspirational for me because it seems like a lot of the things that he learned the hard way, like for instance, that like maybe you have to build a game before you can build like an AR experience. Like I've kind of already like figured out that stuff and calculated it. So rather than, you know, having to go through and, you know, learn that the hard way painfully, I feel like I've already got that figured out. So for me, that's pretty inspirational.
I think the most inspirational thing for me was definitely being able to come back from a mountain of debt and and pay that off with the craziest pivot of all time. Like, yeah, I'm definitely feeling that early early struggle, but knowing there's a light at the end of the tunnel and you just got to keep iterating, make it work. Definitely very relatable.
that was 2.5 years of no salary too when he made that pivot. So that's real commitment.
I got really distracted by the VGN that he was wearing. Sorry.
No worries.
It was a headset manufactured in China and it was like $20 and it works. And it's
Six off.
pardon?
Never mind. No,
Oh.
but yeah, I mean, he's seen it all. He's working with everybody. But yeah, James, that was that was when I found that Reddit post. I emailed him earlier and I said, hey, can I reference this? And I'm glad he talked about that because I mean, you see that in so many scenarios. Almost all really great startups do not start off how they are thought of. We it's very rare from my experience once you pull back the curtain that your original idea ends up being the thing that ultimately works. I think the thing that was probably the most beneficial to learn from Ryan was the fact that when Meta said you shouldn't build a training app, you should build a game, his response was, we didn't even know if we wanted to build a game. And now he's got one of the top selling games on Meta. So like he really went with the flow. And I think that is one of the most important things you can do is not get married to your solution and instead just keep finding the problem and solving it over and over.
So did Meta fund like his initial launch?
I don't know.
You
It was
know
before
that?
my time. It's a great question. I don't know if they were funding stuff back then. It's a good question.
I think he said it was on the Quest 1, so they had they didn't have any of the publishing programs they have now, but they did have like an unofficial, like under the table kind of we're helping boost projects, and they didn't really talk about it until much later. They kind of came out in the Quest 2 and talked about some of the projects they had been like early. But yeah, it wasn't really clear. Probably would have been a good question for him. Sounded like they did though.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good one. What are other things you learned, I guess, from the product standpoint more than the fundraising side of it?
I think it was very clear as to who he was building for and what type of experience. and he kind of really chunked it down first with the putting, and he kind of just like, he didn't try to build too much too soon. He basically took in baby steps, but he was very clear and authentic for golfers. This is a game for golfers. This is not just for just anybody. And I think that helped the line of sight of how you go, what to build and how to go about building the solution. The other key thing is the feedback that he got. I think he spoke to 5 cycles, right? I think there were like 5 like he went through like 5 iterations of really dropping down within a period of 5 or 6 months of getting the feedback. And that was like an accelerant, it sounded like, in his experience.
And he touched on that saying, I had a vision. I thought we should do it. Then we tried it. Turns out 90% of people hated it. And then we stopped doing it. And after that happened a few times in a row, I realized my vision is basically, who cares? And let's just listen to what they have to say to begin with, which is really valuable.
Also, I think one of the keys that is that they're not targeting a typical gamer. These are golfers, and golfers obviously tend to spend more money, and so there's definitely a lot of potential for upsell, or even increasing their rates, I think.
Yeah, that subscription, I thought that was really interesting when he talks about the subscription. Like, if you think about all the ways that a customer can pay him, they can purchase the app up front, they can buy subscription, they can buy the individual courses. Like, he's really giving a lot of options to people so that they can make their decision with what they're most comfortable with. But essentially, it's still the same product you're getting. Like, if you think about how much time they had to talk about all that internally to think about how are we going to sell stuff, the product's already there, but then they have this entire separate strategy around how we're going to sell it. And so I thought that was really valuable because it's not just about the product. He also said that with the engagement metrics, like they had the product was there. They didn't change the underlying product at all. All they did was say, okay, now we have tournaments, but the golf swing doesn't change, the courses don't change. And now all of a sudden they've increased their engagement. And so I think a lot of times people overbuild the product when they kind of already have a great product. It just isn't framed in the right way, either through business model or through some sort of psychological advantage. So I thought those are really good lessons too. Good point.
I was surprised at how low that price is for some reason. $50 for a year I thought it was low.
I thought so too. Yeah.
But they know it better. They know their customers better.
Yeah. And for example, like he said, it's $10 per course. So if he knows in a given year, people will only buy 3 courses, then he's actually generating $20 more per person, even though it seems low. So I'm sure there's some math around that he figured out based on looking at past data.
I thought it was cool how when Walkabout Mini Golf launched, like 3 months after Golf Plus, it forced him to like adapt to that competition instead of compete in that space. Like Golf Plus didn't have an added mini golf section. It was like, okay, let's lead into our customers more. Let's see what they're doing. Let's see what they want. And so that I thought that was pretty cool.
One of my principles is ignore competition. So he actually completely he was right, or he proved me wrong there. And like, he really adapted to the competition. So I thought that particularly was interesting to me because I am more in the camp that you should just not look at what anybody else is doing. And he's way better. So listen to him, not me, FYI.
It sounded like his early users were pretty tolerant of bugs and problems, and I wonder if that's as much the case anymore. If as Quest 3 you get a broader base as opposed to the early adopter kind of Quest 1 people, I'd be curious how that would play out.
He did mention the survey that he had folks complete, so maybe there was some element of a screening as to finding the right people as each of those batches of individuals. So maybe that's true.
I think the other point of that survey, then the users feel like they're helping to build a product. And so maybe it doesn't work, but it's like, oh, my voice is being heard. Like I asked them to change that hole and now it's changed. I think that's really powerful to be able to get people to kind of overlook some of the negatives, is that they
Mhm.
feel like they're adding value to something.
Great point, Don.
To add to that, I would say that the threshold for jankiness is definitely also a factor of your audience. Like if you're appealing to a younger demographic, like the Gorilla Tag kids, if there's things that are a little janky, like Bone Labs, Boneworks type experience, then they're a little bit more receptive to it. Whereas like if you're targeting someone who's paying a monthly or yearly subscription for a golf game, they expect it to be pretty polished, I imagine.
Yep. Which is why you didn't do the subscription early on, because they didn't have the quality product yet.
I admired him for paying attention to his individual course buyers and not forcing them to the subscription model. That was very astute of him to sort of understand that you follow the buyer, keep your buyers happy.
And then they started defending, or helping defend him when other people came at him. He was saying like the community was supporting when they were getting some negative feedback from people. Just before I forget, I just put into the chat the RSVPs for this month. I'm just gonna go over those real quick. Okay, so that was very consumer focused. Okay, so that was very consumer focused. On the 20th, which is our next guest, it's going to be very enterprise focused, specifically healthcare. I am pumped for this one. So I've talked about this a little bit, but this guy has raised hundreds of millions of dollars. His last company he was the founder of, he took public. It's a medical device company. He got in a motorcycle accident and he had to go either into the hospital on a daily basis to get some sort of like insulin pump injected into him because the hospital had the machine, or he had to stay at the hospital for weeks on end and then like be hooked up to this machine. So after he recovered from this motorcycle incident, he mechanically engineered his own personalized insulin pump that he then started mass manufacturing, and that's the company that raised the hundreds of millions and ended up going public. This guy was super talented as a founder. Like maybe the most successful so far that we've had from an exit standpoint. And his new VR company is a VR therapeutics company. I'll let him talk about the details, but he told me, doing 8 figures plus of annual revenue, and they're pretty early on. I think this is like, everybody should come to this. His name's Sean. Like, really, really, please come to that if you're able to do that. Mark, okay, so then that's the 20th. The 27th is also a special one for a different reason. Mark Linnau is like my brother in business. He was the guy who I brought on as my first venture partner back at the first fund I started when I was like 22. And at that point, he was like 25. So we were just like these two kids trying to learn AR VR investing. He's gone on to raise a $30 million fund, and it's LA based. And he's very, very connected, like very connected in VC. So he's going to be awesome. He's kind of like Nico, where he's soft spoken, but very thoughtful. And so I think we'll do that one probably more as a Q&A. I think that'll be the biggest benefit we can get out of bringing him to join us. So that's on the 27th. And then next Wednesday, I've been thinking about this a lot. I want to do a workshop entitled How to Put Yourself Out There. And I think this is really important for sales, newsletters, social media, like so many different areas of business. This has really helped me. The example was when I left Meta, AK got fired. But when I left Meta, I didn't know what I was gonna do. And what I ended up doing was, rather than like having an actual plan, I just opened up a Substack and I just started and I made a promise I was going to blog once a day for 60 days. And it was going to be my complete journey from like getting canned to figuring out what I was doing next. And it was like so freaking embarrassing. Here's the first thing: I was laid off from Meta, time to build. And like literally you can see what I did every day for 60 straight days. And it was highly embarrassing, but it ended up being one of the greatest things ever. Like this was a direct Spatial Collective was a direct thing that came out of this. We ended up getting like 60,000 views, thousands of subscribers, and I share all the data. But this to me was just like a really cool lesson for me, where it showed me how important it is to like be willing to be embarrassed and put yourself out there, not just on the internet, but also amongst calls. So we're going to do a workshop around that. I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do that, but that'll be on the 13th if you want to come to that. And I'll be leading that, and I'll put together a presentation, and we'll go through how to embarrass yourself and why that's beneficial. Okay. All right. That's all the RCP. So please RCP if you get a moment. Any other takeaways from what Ryan had to say, or just general thoughts about anything or questions?
Scary bets are okay. Like personal debt of 600 freaking K. Jesus Christ.
I have one question. As working as a cricket training, we have released on $180 per year. But right now the audience are, you can say, the purely cricketers who haven't experienced the VR before, so they are buying the VR as well. So would it be good that if we can have an other version as a game, so we can get some audience on the Quest store as well? Otherwise, like all the subscriptions, we are signing up, annual subscription, but that are all in person with in-person demos.
Right. And right now your cricket experience is for more the purpose of training than a game, correct?
Yeah, it's more of like the game also, but you can say the retention gaming features are not there, such as tournaments, like the matches, those things are not there. So if you want to go for the training purpose, you can still take the value out of it, but yeah.
I'm sorry. Someone
Yeah,
talking.
sorry, keep on.
Oh, I thought someone else was talking. I think I would probably I would really learn from what Ryan just told us. Like he was at a crossroads where it was, training or more of a game, and he got lucky because he was pushed towards the game. But I think if you just think about the market perspective and like knowing what I know about the Meta user base, gamers are the number one users of that, right? So I'm sure a lot of people that use his game golf, but not 100% of them. And so just by default, it's probably a bigger market on the gamer side. I don't, there's really no data behind that, but like I think I would probably really learn from what he said, where training is not as big of a market, or at least Meta told him that back in the day. And I think it's probably still true today, if not more true, because there's more people that bought these headsets specifically for the purpose of gaming than for training for cricket. So and also you already have built what you need. Like you have all the functionalities, you have the physics, you have the paddles. So, I would probably do like a really easy game. Mohammed, you go? Okay. I would do like a really easy game, and just see if you get good engagement from doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think there's
sure,
huge value.
perfect. So we'll look into that.
James, were you saying something to Mohammed?
Yeah, I was going to add to that. There's another founder here in Austin named JJ. He makes the game Totally Baseball for viewer ready. And there's a huge value in being the only or one of the only sports games on a gaming platform. So if you have cricket and there isn't a cricket game, I think that also goes along with what Ryan was saying. Like when they were the first golf game, anyone searching golf, looking for the sport, that's the game they're going to buy. So I think there's huge value just there alone. Even if it's casual, even if it's not like a full cricket game, like for example, Totally Baseball is super casual baseball game, multiplayer. They've had huge success with that. So I would definitely consider it strongly.
Great point. Yep. There's no market leader on the cricket side. If someone's searching cricket, you have a good chance of coming up first. That's a great point.
So this is the point. There is a leader named IB Cricket, and they have around 75,000 plus downloads, and they are on the game side. And whoever search cricket, they're at that part. But why we are getting the subscriptions, because our physics is a bit of natural, and it is actually people can sense that it is generating the training value of from it. But the difficult part is that we have to get the users in person, and they have to purchase the headset, as a majority of the cricketers are not on the Meta platform. So we were just looking to have one version, you can say easy casual version there as a game at one time purchase, and then we can keep on the training side as well with the B2B and the professional cricketer side.
Makes sense to me. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Mohammed. All right. We are at time. All right. So next week, and then 2 more after. Message me if you have questions or anything in school. Any last points, thoughts, concerns, questions, or lessons that you want to make sure that you say to everybody before we hop off?
Thanks again.
Going once,
Great,
going
great.
twice, going 3 times. Okay. All right. Thank you everybody for coming, for staying. I appreciate that dearly. Have an awesome day. If you get a chance, tell Ryan, thank you. And he was really generous with the time and the lessons. So thanks everybody for coming. Chat later.
Thank you.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye.